My name is Garry Walsh. I'm the producer of Older Than Ireland.
My name is Alex Fegan and I am the director of Older Than Ireland.
Why did you want to do this film, and what do you hope people take away from this film after they see it?
Well, you see, in Ireland we're celebrating this year the centenary of the 1916 Rising. So we thought it would be interesting to interview people who were all born before that year and to get their view on what it means to be Irish, what it means to be 100, and most importantly what it means to be human. And so what we hope that people kind of learn from the film or take from the film is, you know, a greater understanding of what it means to be alive, really.
Okay.
Well, I think as well, they are a very unique group of people, and I'd say probably, and it won't take very long, but where reaching 100 won't be considered, it'll be the same as hitting 60 or 70, so I think it was important that we kind of made a record of these people. Yeah, as Alex said, these were the last people born before 1916, and it's been such a kind of, I suppose, turbulent but interesting time in Ireland's history, and these are the people that kind of helped shape it, not in the very obvious way like our political heroes and that, but these are just everyday normal people that lived in this state of Ireland for 100 years, and so I think it was important to kind of capture their stories and, you know, let them talk and yeah. So.
There was an interesting story you had about what was it, Luke?
Yeah.
Could you just that was this kind of gave you a scare. So what happened there?
So on one occasion, while filming the oldest Irish man on record, he had a condition called narcolepsy, where if he got excited at all, he'd fall asleep. And he was telling us the story of his first kiss, which was very dramatic to him, and still kind of caused him great excitement. So once he'd finished telling us the story, he had a big yelp and went "Yahoo!" and then he just fell asleep. But we thought he had died. So in our haste to get a nurse, we nearly knocked over the camera, which was very expensive. Luckily, the camera operator Colm caught the camera just before it hit the ground, and we ran outside. The nurse came in and said, "Oh no, he does that all the time. He just when he gets excited, he falls asleep." And then once he woke up again, he was full of energy, and he told us about the story of his wedding day.
Oh, nice. So you said there were 300 centenarians.
Yeah.
To figure out how to pronounce that one. Centenarians in Ireland, and how did you find these particular 30?
So we first of all put ads in various newspapers, and that yielded some results. But ultimately, what yielded the most results was sort of a word of mouth, where each centenarian would know of another centenarian in the next parish, and they would recommend us to go to that centenarian, and then we'd film them, and then invariably they would know another centenarian in the next. So they tended to know of other 100-year-olds that lived in their own county, and that's how we kind of managed to find them all. And as I said, we're very competitive with each other. They'd
always know the one that was just, you know, slightly a bit older, or, you know, and, you know, I know so and so they're 102, and, you know, they're 103.
They don't smoke, I do.
I know you didn't like this question, but how many of them have passed on since the completion of the movie?
Well, half of them, pretty much. 15, yeah. Just last week was the most recent one, Kitty, who, if you've seen the film, she's the one who thinks people are eating too many vegetables these days, and that's the reason people aren't, you know. But I mean, you do get very close to them, and I mean, not just from spending time with them, but from going through the whole process of putting it together and the edit, and we probably feel a lot closer to them than probably they do to us. So it does. I mean, it kind of does hit you every time you get an email or a phone call or a text from one of the families to say one of them has passed away. And we got a lovely message off the Kitty's family last week to kind of say, like, was it her daughter, wasn't it?
Her
granddaughter.
Granddaughter. Yeah.
Who said they thought that, you know, the film had given her probably another year of life, and I was just saying inside, you know, she was always asking. They kind of seen a new side to her where she was always asking about how many likes has her picture on the All Northern Ireland Facebook page got, how many shares does she have, and where are people messaging from, and you know, she's very excited about it coming to America and screening over there. So
you said something about the script. What did you do? Did you let them lead the discussion, or did you kind of like just come up with like the more personal questions and let them just go from whatever question you gave them?
It was very much a case of just letting them. I mean, we had an idea that we would tell a story in chronological order from their youth to their old age. So we tried to kind of start off by getting them to tell us about their first memories, and then as the interview would progress, we'd start to get them to. We'd ask them about their, you know, memories of their wedding day and their honeymoon, and then as the final stages of the interview with each person, we'd get them to tell, you know, ask them about their idea of the afterlife and what it means to be 100. And then, so the arc of the film mirrored the arc of life, right, in some respects. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, it was an easy edit because we sort of knew the general structure. Mm-hmm. But there's with a film like this, and Garry would agree, it's how many ways can you skin a cat, and we could have edited this film 20, 30 different ways, right, and each film probably would have been equally good, if not better, than the last. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much stuff which we just couldn't put in. But ultimately we did know, just, you know, we knew what you know, how we were going to tell the general story, and so that sort of informed how we would ask the questions. Mm.
So you said that obviously because you're talking to 30 different people of over 100 years, there's 3,000 years. So how did you decide what to edit out and keep in the story? I mean, aside from obviously the 1916 and then the Irish Civil War, how did you decide what to take out?
Initially, as I was saying, there was we had a desire to kind of pick moments in each decade and get them to reflect upon those moments. But very quickly we realised that really it's the personal journey which is much more interesting. Mm-hmm. So the universal stuff which relates to us all. It doesn't matter whether you're Irish or whether you're from elsewhere. Right. You know, as I said, first kiss, you know, going to the dance. It's really about relationships, and those universal subjects just seem more interesting to them and to us.
Right. The website is olderthanireland.com.
Yeah. olderthanireland.com, and like our Facebook page.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
Why did you want to do this film in particular?
What really appealed to me about Traders was the concept. I think it's a really smart, high concept, and that was very attractive. Also, I had worked with both Rachel and Peter, the writers and directors, but not for a number of years. And we'd worked together in TV. And I thought that the idea was great. I thought that the execution of it was going to be challenging and fun, and that was really what attracted me to the project.
My name is Harry Fox, and 4 months ago I worked in international asset management. I'm going to tell you what happened when the company lost 14 billion overnight and we all lost our jobs.
You know, kind of having the voiceover as a device within the film, it was important to really, I suppose, kind of position him as someone who the audience could relate to, and we're, you know, privy to his innermost thoughts and his ideas of the world, and really help us to kind of identify with him. And so when things start to get a little bit morally ambiguous, or, you know, when decisions he makes are a bit further than perhaps the regular kind of theatre going audience would be, that it's too late now because you're already with that character, and so you're with him on that journey. So I think that the voiceover in that regard has always been used in lots of different films, you know, to that effect.
Right. About your other work, you work with Women in Film and Television Ireland. Yeah. First, for those who don't know what that is, what do you strive to do? And also, you were talking also at the Q&A about the increase in, lately at least, the relative increase in women in producing and directing and everything else. Just talk about
Sure.
that, like elaborate and stuff.
Well, Women in Film and Television is a global organisation which has chapters worldwide and throughout the different states in North America. And its main aim is really to have parity of representation of and parity of pay, for women in the audiovisual sector, both on screen in terms of appearing and in terms of kind of story representation, and also in terms of the work itself, and so behind the camera, I guess, too. There isn't really an increase in the number of women who are being financed to make film and TV, certainly not in the US as far as I'm aware, and certainly that's not the case in Ireland or across Europe either. Something that's something that we in Ireland are working really hard to rectify that situation. So we're gathering data at the moment about, how many, what funds are, because in Ireland a lot of funding for films and for TV comes from the public sector, so from either the likes of the Irish Film Board, for example, or RTE, which is the state broadcaster, also gets a large amount of money from the licence fee. So it's public money, as opposed to the US, which often loses financing from a lot of equity. And private investors. And while we have that in Ireland too, we also have the public funds, and so that's really where our first port of call is, to explore what is the decision-making process in allocating funding and support to male and female filmmakers, and also what the level of that support is. And in Ireland currently, female helmed work represents 17%, so 17% of the Irish Film Board's output in terms of produced work, and we're looking to gather more intelligence and more information as to why that's the case and what measures can be put in place to improve the situation, and to provide the audience with a greater diversity of stories and different outlooks on the world. And we've had some great success in the recent few months. We did our kind of a first official call for members in September 2015, at the end of the month, and by December, on the same day that the Waking the Feminists movement was taking place at the Abbey Theatre, the Irish Film Board made a public statement to say that they would have gender parity of funding in the next 3 years. So I think that's really positive and fantastic that they've taken such a strong and public leadership position on this issue. And so we're looking to work closely with them and with the other kind of key stakeholders in terms of broadcasters and other funders and financiers of work, to ensure that that the statement that they made will come to fruition and that we'll have a success.
Thank you so much for talking with me. Why a musical, and why a musical in Irish?
If you look at interviews with filmmakers, if you're an aspiring filmmaker, I mean, advice they give you is quite basic. It's very difficult to tell someone how to become a filmmaker. It seems like an impossible task, but the only thing that will come up time and time again is to try and do something different, but make sure that it's something that's true to yourself, or whatever, something that you want to do. Now, I never thought I was going to use Irish in film, because I looked at Irish language films that had come out. None of them were very well seen. Very hard to get them programmed. It's not that hard to get them funded, because people are trying to fund Irish language things, but at the same time, it's very rare that an Irish language film will get out of Ireland. It will be seen outside of the Irish television station or what have you. So when I was making a musical, I thought, musicals are very odd in Ireland. People don't make musical films in Ireland. Even though we have a real rich musical culture, everyone learns how to to play Irish instruments when they're 5 years old. So the Irish tradition of playing music is extremely big. And it does appear in filmmaking. You look at the filmmaking of John Carney with Once and Begin Again, and not so much musical films. They kind of get lumped into that genre of being a musical, but they just use the music like a traditional musical would. So anyway, I was thinking of doing a musical film after seeing the films of Jacques Demy, after seeing Umbrellas of Cherbourg, La Demoiselle de Rochefort, I really thought that he was doing something at his own time that was completely stand out from anything anyone was doing in the French New Wave, to make a film inspired by American musicals during this time of post-modernity and such. So I'd originally written it in English, and wasn't really speaking to me. I kind of felt like an imitator of those musicals in the 1930s, the Gene Kellys and such, and that was not really interested me. I was interested by Jacques Demy. So then it came around to the idea of, well, I'm an Irish native speaker. I love Irish. I know it's difficult to put these in films, but there was some success with people recently. What they would do is they would cover popular songs in Irish, popular English songs, and they translate them to Irish. They did very, very well. And in fact, they made a TV show, called Epics, based off that. And I really liked Irish music, speaking Irish, so I thought that by translating this kind of, new age musical to the Irish language, that I could fulfill my own, artistic desires of using the Irish language, but at the same time, I wouldn't alienate people. It's very difficult to get people to watch Irish language content. As soon as they leave secondary school and they finish their leaving cert, they get quite alienated. In the way that Irish is taught at schools, it's taught to children as if they should know it. So it's very, very difficult. People really hate Irish if they're not native Irish speakers. They find it incredibly difficult, and they kind of resent the language as soon as they leave. So I was kind of faced with that. How could I use Irish to try to get around that? And in a sense, when the film came out, and the trailer debuted online, it was shared by loads of publications, and it screened on the film festivals. It did work. People who were younger kind of appreciated seeing Irish spoken in Dublin, spoken well. The Dublin looked very nice. It wasn't used as a miserable place. They kind of saw, Irish language in that context is completely new. Irish language in the arts is used in very, very dark, literature and theatre and filmmaking. The Irish language filmmaking that I know is extremely, dark, miserablest films, which doesn't help the cause of the Irish language, in my opinion. So that was a long-winded answer to why using Irish, why I made an Irish language musical. Oh, and for the earlier question, filmmakers tell you to do something that's not been done before. No one had made an Irish language musical film. There had been Irish language musical plays, but nothing filmed.
Right.
So I wanted to get in there and do something that I could market as being the first. This is the first something. Is always a good thing to market yourself with. Right. And they're the kind of cynical answers, you put after saying, I really want to make something Irish, and I really wanted people to watch it. So how could I go about that?
The credits. I don't usually ask about the credits, but it looked like the credits were stop motion.
Yeah, they were.
I thought they were. I was about to ask you, what did you?
I really like stop motion, and I was making a stop motion short at the time because Bonsoir Luna took a long time to make. It actually, the post production of that film was very difficult because I wanted the film to look. It was shot in the sunlight, a lot of it. Dublin doesn't have much sun, so there was a lot of issues with that. So I had to learn much more invasive color correction techniques. So the film was shot over a period of 2 weeks. I edited it for about 8 months. So I had other projects on the go at the time. So I was making a stop motion film, and I was like, credits are really boring. People don't stay for credits. I'm going to make some credits. And that's what I did. And it was like, people did have said things like yourself about credits. They've been like, what's with the credits? Not really in a negative way.
No, I was just surprised. Like, no one ever does stop motion credits. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was watching them again just in the screening there, and I hadn't seen it for a while. I was like, oh god, yeah, I made these. That was weird, but I do like them. I think it's fun.
To be honest, an Irish language musical with stop motion credits, that's the real outlier, which I think is what makes your film so unique. It's like it's something no one has literally, as far as I've ever done.
Yeah, so it's not something I could say. Wait for the credits. I hadn't said like it's an Irish language musical. It's got stop motion credits. I should probably add that in as a little addendum in next time I go and talk about the film or an article while it comes out or something.
So was the story based on any experiences that you've had, or that the cast had, or anybody involved with the film had, or was it all just let's just write about a guy who's in love with
I tell you, there's a tradition in Irish filmmaking, or in Irish culture, of the disapproving mother. It crops up in a lot of narrative and a lot of stories. It's a very Irish narrative thing.
It is.
And I think, because it came to me in the sense that I've known some blind people, and I haven't really seen blind people represented on screen. And I can see why people wouldn't. They're kind of like, what's the point? But it was something I wanted to explore because I hadn't seen it before. So the character Luna being the blind barista also played into the idea of the fantastical cafe rung with, using bells for her to work there. And I like the idea of her being very independent despite her disability. Now, the disapproving mother really played into that in the sense that no matter how independent this person could be, the mother would not be happy to let her, reign free in that sense. So I kind of used that stock kind of archetypal character that comes into Irish narrative so much. And, thank you very much. That's stock character, and use her and put her into a modern setting of like, she's not just disapproving of this person because that's what Irish mothers do. She was disapproving of him because of a very valid point, fear of the her blind daughter kind of lumping herself in with someone who perhaps was a layabout. That was the idea as well, that because he was a street artist. What is that? There's a kind of I mentioned the Mary Poppins thing in the screening, and that's because I think that the lead character is very reminiscent of Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins, because you don't really know, like, how does this person doesn't make money, does he? He kind of just has a different job every day. He's this kind of fantastical figure that roams throughout the narrative with no real agency, but he just kind of seems to be okay, and you don't really know what he was. So that I placed that kind of character in my musical, in the sense a mother would of course hate that person. She would be like, well, this person's terrible. Like, obviously he's great, he's very fun and stuff, but there's no stability there. So that's done so well.
All right.
That's it. Thanks very much.
No problem.
You did?
I guess the first question would just be, why this movie? Why did you want to do it?
I think there's two things the Irish do are known for: immigration and drink. And this is a doc about drink and immigration. And on their own, they're deadly enough, but the cocktail of drink and immigration together has sent people to early graves. Also, I suppose there's a political dimension to this as well. We've done documentaries of the Irish in the UK about the guys who fell through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sense in America we haven't gone there yet for some reason. We like to tell the stories of the Kennedys, we like to tell the stories of the Fords, we like to tell the stories of the success stories of the Irish who went to America. In fact, I had two Irish Americans lined up who were good talkers for this story, but pulled out. And I think they didn't like the portrayal that we were doing of the Irish as drinkers. So I think Irish America likes to hold up an image of the Irish being very successful. But we all know, you and I know, that a lot of them ended up as hobos. You saw all the footage in the Bowery. It was littered with Irish surnames, all those slop houses. So I think that's another reason why this story had to be told. And I think there will be many more stories about the negative side of Irish immigration to the States. We didn't all succeed.
Especially with the film Brooklyn that just came out last year. There's that one scene during Thanksgiving, there was a scene in a banquet hall where all the homeless Irish people came in and they were fed by the local Irish people and the parish who had succeeded and gotten jobs. So that was like what you just said. I think there is more of a focus on, and not everybody was quite so lucky.
That's true. Yeah.
I think that's definitely starting to become more of a focus now. Like, it's not just the Irish were not just this lucky. All right, this was like a small percentage. This is what happened for a lot of people.
You betcha. Yeah. In fact, Pat told me a story that her grandfather was cleaning cars in 1910s and at night and caught pneumonia.
Oh, wow.
So they're doing pretty rubbish jobs as well, which wouldn't have been that healthy. A lot of them were digging the tunnels. A lot of them got blown sky high. So no, these stories are emerging, let's be fair, but the real kind of hobo stories, you're hearing them in London, you're hearing them in Birmingham, but you're not hearing them in Chicago, in Boston, in New York so much. Right. But I think they are emerging. But what was interesting as well, what Anthony Malloy, when he said he couldn't quite fathom how he fell off the back of the herd. He always thought the herd of the Irish always looked out for themselves. And they did, to be fair, like you said, in Brooklyn. They did look after the Irish. But you can be sure that some guys were just too unmanageable, you know what I mean?
Right.
And let's be honest, if I was walking down the street and I saw Mike Malloy coming towards me, you might cross the other side of the street. This guy is a wild character, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, how did you find out about him? What was the picture? How did you get that?
Yeah, I was sitting down watching telly, and the BBC show QI came on, and they did this story about durable Mike Malloy, and I was just gobsmacked by how I'd never heard of this story, and I asked around, and very few people had heard of it. So I did a bit of digging and came up with this extraordinary story that is kind of larger than life, stranger than fiction, but was also the backbone upon which you could hang the bigger story I was talking about alcohol and emigration. And the QI section is 3 minutes. It's wildly funny and entertaining, and I knew that you could bring that sensibility to the doc and have that light and shade in it. You'd have the kind of outrageous reconstructions of how they tried to kill him, but also there's the serious side to that story, which is somebody who's trying to self-medicate their depression, basically, which is a really grim prospect so far from home, you know.
And that photo, how did you come across the photo of just Malloy laying dead?
Yeah, it was in the court papers. We got that, and it was evidence in the court. And I guess, I know even though it was in black and white, but it was, the pathologist talks about having dug him up. These guys were the gang who couldn't shoot straight. Yeah, she talks like Mark Simpson.
She does. She does.
She smoked a lot, actually. And she said, if you poison somebody with carbon monoxide, the colouring stays in your skin up to 3 weeks later. So when they dug him up, they went, "Uh-oh, I know what happened here." You know,
right.
So that was their undoing.
Well, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
It's not about getting rid of the murals, it's not about getting rid of the politics on the murals, but it's about asking people, what is it that you want? What is your vision? What is your fear?
All right, so my first question is, why aren't they taking on sectarianism as seriously as they should be? Do you have any idea why, or is it just a lapse of just communication and...
I actually don't really know. I mean, sometimes in politics, we've seen this with British rule, is it's often better to divide than rule. You know, it's divide and rule sometimes, you know, so sometimes it actually helps some types of political agenda. When you don't have a united group of people, it actually helps maybe more when people are divided and they don't actually get to realise the big secret that they're actually all the same, really, and they actually would all get along if they were allowed to live together in peace.
Or, I suppose, just, you know, it's a difficult subject to deal with because, you know, it just stirs so much emotion in people, and people don't know really how to sit down and engage in very practical things that might bring someone together. It's you know, it doesn't happen, I suppose, overnight or anything. You know, it doesn't. But you need a long-term sort of plan where, you know, everyone's agreeing, and when you're in a climate that it's quite difficult to get people together and in a continued way, I suppose, you know, it just doesn't get dealt with. It just gets kind of, right, we'll go for the easy things, you know, we'll concentrate on something, you know, which is a little bit easier, and it kind of gets a little bit, and maybe by concentrating on the easy subjects, then, you know, we'll deal with sectarianism that way. But, you know, really, it has to be kind of maybe tackled head on, and you know, people should be challenged a bit more, perhaps, you know, about, you know, their own personal views, which perhaps isn't happening enough.
And actually, what you're saying, David, as well, it's reminding me of of a lot of the stuff that goes on in Northern Ireland, and it's like, it's sticking plasters. It reminds me of the scenes in the film where we have graffiti, it's painted out, someone does it again, it's painted out. It's like a sticking plaster over the problem.
Right.
They're painting it out. It's not solving the problem. You know, there needs to be a medium to long-term plan, not a short-term sticking plaster attempt at solving the problems. You need to go to the root of the problem. And I mean, from our extensive research and just our lives living in Northern Ireland, the school system is segregated, the housing is segregated. You know, if you don't have people living together, not living in parallel worlds where they don't meet, people actually living together, you know, all this is going to just take forever to become a normal society. And that's what everyone wants anywhere in the world, is just to have a life, to have a job, to have a family, you know, to live in peace, and just that you know, it's not that complicated, you know. And I really do think that there's an urgent need to address this whole issue of segregated lifestyles, and it starts, you know, with children.
Right, which actually leads me to my next question. Because for America, it's a lot. I don't know if it's different. Like the word segregation here is a lot. It's associated with something else. But what is segregated in Ireland? What is it that's segregated? Why is it segregated? I literally know nothing about this.
Well, it's segregated in terms of it's divided into Catholic and Protestant. So they would be the two, you know, the two different, I suppose, religions or factions, you could call it. It's, you know, again, even the terminology is quite complex and confusing in Northern Ireland, and very sensitive, you know. So you would have, originally, I suppose, you would have had the Catholic and Protestant, which are religions, but actually now, you know, a lot of people will say, they won't say Catholic, they'll say nationalist. Right, and then the other side would be loyalist. Right. You know, but there are different words, but basically it's two sides. It's two sides of the same coin.
And they're literally not allowed to mix?
Well, they go to different schools. Catholics go to one type of school, Protestants go to another. There are very few integrated schools where kids from both religions go to the same schools. And as well as that, like in our film, Michael Doherty, who's been working in peace and reconciliation for his whole life, basically, he says 98% of our housing is segregated, of social housing is segregated. You know, so our own city of Derry, we have, you know, originally it would have been, I think before the Troubles, before we were kind of around, I think it was, the areas were more mixed, where people did actually live together in peace, but then the Troubles came about, and you know, a lot of Protestants or loyalists moved out. They felt they had to move out of the kind of mixed areas, you know, and I guess it was kind of like factions kind of start, you know, people didn't feel safe in areas, again, because of many of the markers that they would see, the type of graffiti, the type of murals, the type of slogans in a community. It tells you straight away, you're not wanted here, this is ours, go away, you know, and you don't feel safe. So the river in Derry would have previously been kind of a divide, with Catholics on one side, Protestants on the other side. I mean, and there still are people to this day, Catholics who've never been across the river, and Protestants who've never been across the river, and I know people from both sides who've never ever crossed the river.
Wow.
You know, it's mad, crazy.
Wow.
You know,
so it's a kind of geographical divide,
which happens in many places. Like there, you know, it does, but then you see there's a fear factor, and then the whole issue of children. Like if you don't educate the children together and they're wearing uniforms, it means children are afraid even to walk into or walk past, not even into, an area of a different persuasion, and they get beaten up. So they actually do get beaten up, you know, because people will go, oh, you're different, you're uniform, you're Catholic or you're Protestant, like both, and it's really terrible. It's heartbreaking, actually, heartbreaking, you know. So it's time for change. Time for change. No more sticking plasters, please. We would like some change.
Right. So thanks both very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.